Here is the question, and here is our mind map approach. We have seen this passage in earlier lessons, and this is the mind map we came up with. Our first bite was the first sentence of the passage. What did it do? It raised a question around whether this scientist can be considered a remarkable one. Our second bite is this part of the passage. What did this bite do? It developed a case for yes as the answer, as in why this scientist should be considered a remarkable one. Then we saw a contrast trigger, followed by what we can consider the last bite of the passage. And what this does is to develop a case for no as the answer, as in why this scientist cannot be considered a remarkable one. We completed the first 4 steps, and now we must go about reading the question stem. Purpose of a highlighted term question here. The context is that a contrast from the information in the previous part of the passage has been introduced, and the contrast is that the fame of our scientist is incongruent with his standing among scientists. So, what is this highlighted part doing? It is showing a contrast from the fame of our scientist. Therefore, to say that the highlighted term is part of an implication that our scientist's fame did not necessarily reflect in his reputation among specialists is an excellent answer choice. Implication is a good term here because the highlighted content is part of this contrast being discussed here. Then to say that his fame did not necessarily reflect in his reputation among specialists is quite what's going on here. The context here is that his fame is in incongruence with his standing among scientists. These scientists are being referred to as specialists in our answer choice. E is the correct answer. It is not about comparison of the fame of our scientist with that of other scientists. So A is incorrect. The highlighted term does not explain a claim referenced earlier in the passage. In fact, this is part of a contrast being introduced from whatever has been stated earlier in the passage. Choice B is clearly incorrect. How the fame of our scientist affected his standing among scientists has not been discussed at all in the passage. Besides, to say that his fame may have affected his standing among other scientists is quite an amateur thought. You should be always very careful about such crafty sounding amateur answer choices. Some students would select choice D, but this is not correct because it has not been established anywhere in the passage that our scientist did not make major scientific contributions. It has only been discussed that his work was of a certain type rather than being of another type that leads to a scientist being remarkable. In fact, the passage has already discussed some of his significant scientific contributions. Therefore, answer choice D is incorrect. E is the correct answer choice.